Great. So today our exercise is going to be working on a site plan. So typically what you'll do is hopefully if you're working at an office, you'll receive a DWG probably from a surveyor or from the previous architect. And from that, you can go ahead and develop a 3D model. So in the drive, I've already placed in there a site plan for this project. And what I want to make sure that you guys know how to do is if you receive a DWG, how to get it to the right scale so that you guys aren't working on something that doesn't match real life. And my plan is, unless we don't have enough time, my plan is to show you guys how to bring that over to Illustrator. And we might bring the site plan, or we might just make 2D of something else, and I'll show you how to do something a little bit more simple. So does anybody not have the site plan open? Everybody has it? All right, great. I already set the units here, but just for good practice, we're going to go to units. And we're just going to make sure that we're working in inches. And I set my distance display to feet and inches. I downloaded, or basically I created a drawing from OpenStreetMaps to Illustrator, and I converted it to Rhino. It's pretty quick, and next week, I'm not going to get into that because next week we're going to learn how to develop it using Grasshopper. But for now, what I want to show you is manually how to do this, and then we're going to start generating 3D objects from this, okay? So once everyone has the file open, you've checked your units, we're going to check the scale. And this is how I would check the scale, which is how I set the scale here. Whenever you get a file, like I said, from the surveyor, from another architect, from a friend, if you're working on a project with someone else, want to make sure you're working on the correct scale. So what I did was I downloaded, since I generated this drawing myself, I went to Google Earth and I used a reference to check the distance so that I can set the scale in Rhino. So I went to Google Earth, I typed in Lee Circle in New Orleans. There's an option here where you can check the distance. I can measure distances in this on the site or the drawing. So here's what I did. I just took the distance, the diameter of Lee Circle, which is telling me it's 3480. And it really depends on what I clicked on. I may not have zoomed in far enough, because I think what I did here is I did 350. So if you check the distance, type in distance, go to the circle here. Oh, it's giving it to me in feet. Is there a way for you to? Never mind. I know how to do this. I'm gonna go back to decimals. Yeah. So that's gonna tell me how many inches. So it's 3,413 inches. When I go to Google Earth, 3,480. That's pretty close. So that's what I did. If I'm going to mess up the scale just for kicks, if it's much smaller, what I would do is I would select the whole thing, type in scale. What did I say? 3,450? Say 3,450, enter, and it's back to scale. It's just like that.
Reference to a streets, they always kind of, depending on the amount of lanes.
What's that?
It's easy. I mean, in this case, a circle, it's
Yeah.
also a good reference.
Yeah, you can use buildings. You can. So most of us are going to go to New Orleans, right? And what would be great is for you to take, especially the site that you're working on, the dimensions of the site. And you can then refer back to your Rhino and make sure that you have the correct scale. Because Lee circle doesn't really matter if it's 100% accurate. What you want is the site. So yeah, later on when we get there, we can go ahead and figure out what the distances are on the site and make sure that the Rhino model reflects that. Okay, next step. Set your layers so that you can start generating a drawing and set your line weights based on the layers. So the first thing that I would do, that I'd make a new layer and call it site. Everyone can do this differently, but this is how I would do it. I would make a layer for site. I'd click it and make a sub layer. I would do buildings, new layer, curb. The buildings I'll set to blue, the curbs I'll set to red. And once you have that, by the way, if I'm missing something, if I'm skipping something that you would do, chime in. So what I'm going to do is basically select what I know look like buildings. And once I have a few selected, I can just start dropping them in to that layer. What I like to do is I like to turn that layer off. And little by little, I'll start moving everything over. And I can see what's left. If I select the blocks, I can move those to curbs. Start turning those off. I'm not going to do the whole thing. Yep. Yep.
How are you changing those layers of line to like be buildings or curves?
Yeah, so first you have to have the layers on there. And what I'm doing is I'm basically selecting the line. Then I'm going over to the layer that I want to drop it in. So for here it'd be curves. Right click. Are you on a Mac or Windows?
Windows.
Okay, so then you're going to go to change object layer. If you're on a Mac, I think it's move to. It's just a different term, but it's the same thing. So when I turn these back on, I can start to see the difference between buildings and curbs. The reason why I didn't do this for you is because you guys should learn how to do this. But eventually we should all have or be able to create a site plan this way. So I don't know building heights, but I'm going to go into generating some 3D off of this. So maybe what we should do is just take a block and we'll make a 3D model out of the block. So select the block. I'm going to use this one since I already have it complete. So I've already generated the curb and I have the lines for the buildings. And to simplify what we're doing here, let's go ahead and just isolate that block and those buildings. So I'm going to select those, go to the light bulb at the top. That's turned off. And I'm going to hold it and go over to this invert hide select. think it's what it's called. Isolate objects. So this is basically going to turn everything else off. So now it's just that block. Cool. Everybody with me? On the right, I'm going to, again, layer management is super important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to make this 3D. So I have all my objects that are three-dimensional sit on that layer. And I'll do the same thing that I did before, which is, I'll probably call it 3D building. So I accidentally put this outside the folder or my layer. So what I'll do is I'll just drop it in by highlighting it and dropping it in 3D. So now they're in the same 3D. What happens is now, for example, up here, I can just select the site, light bulb, and it gets rid of everything that's in there. So I have control. So go ahead and you're going to select this. Select the block with the buildings, go to your perspective. Select it first, because when you go to your perspective, most likely it's not going to be there. So select it first, go to your perspective. At the top, go to magnifying glass with the little objects. That's zoom selected. So now I'm looking at the block in perspective. Is anybody not up to where I am? Sorry? Yeah, of course. So I'll just be out here. I'll go to top, which is where I was looking at it. Select it. Go to perspective. I don't know where I am, but I just want to get to that block. So rather than looking for it, I'm just going to click up here to magnifying with two objects in it. The other way that you can do it, you don't have to press that, is just do zoom S. And that's zoom selected. Okay. I don't know what orientation I'm on anymore. Okay, so I'm looking at a block. There's different ways that you can generate three-dimensional surfaces, and I'm just going to show you a few basic ones. For this, since this is ground, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it. I'm going to make this the current layer that I'm on. In theory, you should be extruding it, but I'm going to first show you how to turn this into a surface. So if you go over to the left side, look for the icon that I have highlighted right now. And this just basically generates a surface out of a curve. So I'm going to click it. Actually, it didn't do it. So, sorry. It's not this one, it's the second one. So if you click and hold, it's a surface from a planar curve. So that's there. I can't see it because I'm in wireframe. So change your view to shaded. And now you have a surface for your curb. I'm going to go to buildings now because I'm going to extrude. And so what you can do now, I don't know the heights, so I'm just going to make them up. I'm going to select the box. Extrude curve. At the top, just make sure that your solid is set to yes. And I'm going to make this a 40-foot building. So 40. Enter. I could do it again by selecting another box. Yeah. Yeah, it's good question. So you can do them all. I mean, you can do multiple. So let's say this whole thing is all at 60. So I can just extrude 60 feet. So I'm going to finish doing the block. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
So you're trying to do something accurate, would you have to go back and
Yeah. So I mean, there's several ways that you can do it. I mean, if you're close to the site, you can go ahead and go to the site and figure out what the heights are. You can estimate what the heights are. But you can also next week we're going to be doing something that develops the buildings automatically. First, we're going to show you this. But yeah, that's one way of doing it. You can like I've done it where we go to Google Maps, the site's too far, and we can just look at basically more or less what if it's a house that's 1 story, you can more or less guess how high that is versus a 5 story building, right? Mhm. Are yours not solid? So is it extruding with no top? Yeah, you can cap it, but that I'll show you what's happening at the very top. Did you do cap? Okay, or solid, right? Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? No questions? Okay. So just so you guys can see at the very top, I can get rid of all of my curves and only keep the 3D model because I put them on different layers, or I can't hide this because I'm currently in that layer. I can go to my site, I can turn off everything that's 3D and just look at the 2D drawing. So you can only do that if you're managing your layers correctly. Make 2D, make 2D, and scale. Illustrator and yeah, we have an hour. So we might finish a little bit early. I'll take some questions. Does that sound good? Okay. So everybody has a block with buildings, 3D, extruded.
If you want it taller, how do you extrude not the curve, but the
Yeah. Yeah, good question. So you mean like if you already put it at 20 feet and you want it at 30?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So let's say that this is, I don't know what the height of this is, but let's say I absolutely need it to be 80 feet. I can scale 1D is what you would use. So if you do scale 1D, it's just going to do one dimension. And so you want to select that dimension. So if you do scale, I'm going to do an example up here. Scale 1D. I'm going to start with the bottom. I'm going to click the top. And once I do that, now it's asking me how high do I want it. I can just guess, which is not a good way of doing it. Or I can type 80 feet, and then it scales it. Pretty easy? Yeah? No? Okay, any more questions?
When you form those, like you surface the block, is there a way to get rid of like the lines that show it's a surface, or does it
Yeah, so you can hide them. I hid them earlier, so I can go back current to 3D. And since my site is all curves, I can just click on that and it gets rid of it. So there's supposed to be a edge here that's red. When I turn that on, you see that it's red. I don't know if you can tell, but it's red up here. If I turn it off,
You just hide it.
yeah, you can just hide it, and you can just do that by turning it off. So I'm gonna type show again, so I see the whole thing. In reality, that curve is gonna have some height, probably like 4 inches, and you should be modeling that. It's gonna look better when you do a render, or when you make 2D. So to keep things simple, I'm just gonna keep it like this for now. But I just want you guys to keep that in mind. And what I would do is, just so that the ground on the site is 0, I would extrude the curve down. So how do I do that? Extrude, and I do -4 is 4 inches down. So now I have some thickness. Okay, so I'm going to do -4 for the curve. Oops. Okay, and what I would do then is just to get the overall street to show, and I don't have to actually go through all the streets. What I would do is I would take the box that's on the outside, it's already there. First thing I do is close it, or actually join. I'm able to join. I don't know why. Let's see. Okay, so it's unable to join because it's not actually terminating. So what I'll do is I'll do fillet. That's just an easy way for me to fix that. So fillet radius is set to 1. I'm going to just set it to 0. By typing 0, enter. I'll click the 2 lines. That I want, and now I should be able to join it, and it'll be one object. Make sure all of you know how to do that. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and make a new 3D layer. And I'll call it street or road actually. I'll be current to that layer. Again, make a surface on your curves. Now this is going to show up on the top of the curve, which is not what I want. So one of the things that actually useful is move vertical. So what I'll do is I'll select. This is the surface that I want. So I just select it by clicking it. And I'll type in move, enter, and right away option do vertical. Yes. So type vertical for the V, or you can just click the V, enter. And I can click the edge of that surface and tell it to move to the bottom. And using my snap, I can do that. So now I'm to the bottom. So this is set to 0 based on Rhino. And this is -4. So now I have curves, I have my roads, and I can start drawing right on the site. Whatever it is, consistent. This is a way that I would do it. just make sure that relative to itself, everything is consistent. So you have road, you have curb, and on that is your building. Yeah. If you decide to do the road or the street at 0, and then the curb plus 4, that's fine. Just have to be aware of that. So when you're drawing a plan, you're actually drawing it 4 inches into the curb. Yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't. Unless you're doing something like if you're showing a tunnel and you need to somehow, like, even then I probably wouldn't. Unless you're working for like Elon Musk, I'm probably not ever going to do a tunnel. I did, yeah. And how I did that is I used the outer profile. If I didn't already have a box, I could have just made a surface. Honestly, it doesn't even matter. I can just go over here to make a rectangle from corner to corner. It doesn't even matter that it's the same size. The whole point is that when I render this, I'll get the thicknesses that I'm looking for. Should be really fast. Okay, so you can already see from the render up top, a 4-inch change in elevation reveals a shadow. That's going to look good. So the more detail you can get, the better. Cool. All right, let's look at Make 2D. So what I'd like for you guys to do is just to get rid of the road. We don't need it for this right now. So you can get rid of the road, and you can get rid of okay. So just look at your 3D model of your block. And what we're going to do is make 2D, and we're going to send this over to Illustrator. Unless there's something, Shermeen, is there anything that you think I should cover before I do that? I'm gonna set scale. Okay. Yeah, you guys can start using this too. If you guys want to start getting to work on your projects, you guys can start generating or preparing your files so that you can start generating site plans. And since we have a 3D, we'll actually be able to cut a section through this and get sectional information. I just wouldn't do that yet because we're gonna cover accurate heights for the buildings next week. Okay, so this is just an example. What you'll do is select your block, all the buildings and the curb, and you're going to type in Make 2D. And for now, let's just do one drawing at a time. So rather than going and doing the third angle, we're just going to set view. We're going to maintain source layers. and I would show hidden for now. On a site plan, you normally wouldn't do it, but I just want to show you guys that. So I'm going to hit OK. I'll go to top view, and now I can see the make 2D of that. Oh, I grouped it. If you have Rhino 6 sometimes groups makes 2D, so you can ungroup it by typing ungroup. Okay, so we have a perspective. The next thing that I'd like for you guys to do is, now that you're in top view, find your block and make 2D from the top. Again, view. There's a group output at the bottom if you guys are looking at on the screen. I'm going to uncheck that because I don't like having it grouped. Okay, so now I have a top view and I have a perspective of that block. What I'd like to show everyone is this is really, really, really important. I see students who don't know how to export their drawings to scale, and doing, like, eyeballing it is not enough. It's not an accurate way of doing it. So I'm going to show you guys a trick that I use. You probably wouldn't see a lot of people doing it this way, but I find this to be effective because I'll give you the example. If you're going to do one presentation and you're going to have a site plan and a floor plan, your site plan is probably going to be at a much smaller scale than your floor plan. And if you have a section wall detail, that's going to be even bigger detail. So how do you know that you can get all of those drawings, let's say on a 46 by 72 or 48 by 72? You don't really know, and you need a reference. What I've seen is people take this to AutoCAD and do ridiculous things that way. You don't need to do that. What I'm going to show you is how you can do that here, and I'll set an example with an 11 by 17 sheet of paper. If you want to print this site plan on an 11 by 17, what's the scale? You don't really know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I would do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy the make 2D. Crap. Okay, so I'm going to copy this down so I keep the original. And I'm going to set this so that the orientation is correct. Let's assume, by the way, that true north is up, which it should be.
Wait, did you mean to do that?
Yeah.
You copied the. Oh, okay.
I just copied it over. So this is a 3D model. And these are the make 2Ds. I just made a copy. And I'm basically going to do this as an exercise to get you guys to learn how to scale. So I want to make sure that I hold on to true north. And true north should be north right now, which is why this is drawn at an angle. So what I'll do is I'll set a little indicator. I drew a circle. I went and I clicked down here at center. And as you go to the edge of the circle, if you have your center snap on, it'll snap to the center. And I'm going to go, whoa, snap to the center, and I'm going to go straight vertical. And what's happening is I don't have my quad, so I do. So I just got rid of my perpendicular because every line from the center or every edge of the circle from the center is going to be perpendicular. So I turned it off. I can now turn center off, turn perpendicular back on. So now I have a true north symbol, which is really important in your site plans. And what I'll do is I'll select the whole thing and I'll rotate this so that the bottom edge is horizontal. So I'll click on one corner, the other corner, And my ortho isn't on, so I'm going to hold shift, and then I'm going to click again, move that out of the way. So now I have a site plan. And if, let's say this were where I was going to design the building, I can now draw that, and I have true north. So I don't have to make this up. Got it? I didn't do this on its own layer. So new layer, change object. Okay. I don't know if I said this before, but I'll say it again, just in case. Don't use yellow as a color for your layers, because I'll show you an example. Okay, that is set to yellow. Awesome. If I were to select this, how do I know I'm selecting it? I don't. So don't use yellow. Okay, here we go. This is my trick. This is how I do it. I'm gonna set a new layer, and I'm gonna just call this sheet. And I'll make it red. That's not red. Red. Okay. I'm gonna go to my rectangle. I'm gonna draw. Oops. I'll go to my layer here. Rectangle. I'm gonna do an 11 by 17 sheet. So 17, enter. 11, enter. Okay, that's a really small box, but that's what an 11 by 17 sheet of paper looks like if you were walking around the site. It's really small. So now what I want to do is be able to fit this 11 by 17 around this, so that when I export it to a scale, it's exactly the size that fits on 11 by 17. So I know what scale it's at. Right now, we don't know what's going to fit, so we can do a quick trial and error. This is a lot better than exporting it to a scale and then being wrong, and then exporting again and exporting again. So we can do this all within Rhino. And so if you want, you guys can just follow along by watching me up on the screen. I have an 11 by 17. And I type in text. And just so that I remember, because when I blow this up, I'm not going to know what it is. Okay, so it's 11 by 17. And I'm going to draw a vertical line. Vertical line. All right, try to follow along. I have my vertical line. I'm going to offset this 12 inches. So that distance between those two lines is 12 inches. If I'm going to try to see if I can get a 32-inch scale drawing to fit an 11 by 17, what I would do is just offset one of these lines. So I'll offset this one, and I'll do 1 32nd, hit enter, and I'll offset it. So now I have 1 foot and a 32nd from that line. Now I'll just select the paper. I'll type in scale, go from the original line to the 1/32 to the 1 foot. There you go. So if you were to make a drawing of just your building on the site, an 11 by 17 will fit, but it won't fit the full block. So I'm going to undo, and I'll have to do 1/64. That's the next step up. So scale, Sorry. I know that that's 1/32, so I'm going to delete that. Offset 1/64. Enter. And now I can do this again. Select the sheet, scale, original line to 1/64 to a foot. Okay. There you go. So now I know that this site at 1/64 is going to fit on an 11 by 17. I can do the same thing, this same exercise. There's those two lines that I use are down there. I can't see them, but I know they're down there. So I just selected something. It says 3 curves were selected. And I can just zoom into that. I can do this here too. Let's say I'm going to print on a 48 by 72. So I'm going to type in 48, 72. That's a 48 by 72 sheet. I'm going to do the same exact thing. Scale. Click, click to a foot. Okay, on my presentation board, that's what that would look like. So now you guys know how much space it'll take. I know that I can fit, maybe if I want to put some project information with my name, professor's name, studio, whatever, you guys can now set that up without having to export anything. That's the way you would do that. Does it not make sense to anyone? Make sense? Okay. All right, great. So go ahead and try it because we're all going to export this to Illustrator, and I want to make sure that everyone is nailing this. So yeah, we're going to do it again. Okay, ready? So the first thing you're going to do is draw a rectangle that's 11 by 17. Rhino wants to know first the width and then the length. So you can't write 11 by 17 if you want a landscape sheet. It's 17, then 11. So 17, enter, 11, enter. Got it. That's an 11 by 17 sheet of paper. Now I want to use my reference lines. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a vertical line. Doesn't matter how long it is. And that line, I'm going to offset it 12 inches. By the way, have you used this before? Have you done that before? No. This, yeah. Yeah. Do you have another way of doing this? Scaling and just making sure that things, do you? What's that? No. Yes. So you scale the drawing down. So I'm doing the opposite, right? Okay, cool. Yeah. So, okay. Any Sharmeen, is there like another? Okay. So, okay. So I used to do it like that too. The reason why I like this, and again, there's two ways you can do the opposite. And I actually the reason why I prefer this is because I don't like to mess with my model. My model I keep 1-to-1 always. So when I export, I'm exporting 1-to-1, and in Rhino you can set the scale at which you want to export. And so I'm never changing the scale of my drawing. I'd rather change the scale of my sheet, and if I get that wrong, doesn't matter. It'll still export correctly at the correct scale into Illustrator. That's why it's sort of like one less thing that I have to worry about. And it's the opposite. It's almost the same thing. Okay, so I did my 11 by 17. Everybody has it. Everybody has their vertical line. Everybody offset 12 inches. Cool. So you can take one line. I'm just going to do the opposite of what I did before to show you that it doesn't matter. So select the other line, offset, I'll do it again. Select the line, type in offset, and I'm going to do 1/64. Enter. Now it's going to ask me what side do you want to offset that line. I'm going to go in because I need it to be between these two lines. Enter. Cool. Now you have your 3 lines. You'll select your sheet. You should label it for good practice. Text. So type in text, 11/17. Here's another way actually that you can do it, just as a note. You can type in dot. I don't know if I reviewed this last time. Type in dot and do 11/17. Hit enter. The reason why I like, so did I review dots last time? Okay, dots, awesome. If you're working in teams, they're even better because you can always leave notes for other people. What I really like about notes, and they can be distracting, or sorry, dots, is if you zoom out, you can always see it. So it's relative to your view, not to the size that you drew it in.
It's always like that?
Always. So as you can see, the 11/17 just, and as long as I'm scrolling towards, like my mouse is on that 11/17, I'm going to go towards that. I can also just, even if I'm zoomed out here, I can select it. Oh, it's a lot of stuff. So text dot, zoom, Z, enter, S, enter. Yeah, so you can use either or. All right, anyways, so we're going to go back. Select the sheet, scale, enter. And then I'm going to go to the outside line, click. The inside line, click again. And I'm going to go to the one that's a foot away, click again. And that's it. So my sheet is there now at 11/17 relative to the site. Cool. Okay, ready? We have about 20 minutes. I'm going to show you guys how to export things in Illustrator. Has anyone not used Illustrator before? Everyone's used Illustrator. So everyone knows fills, strokes. Yeah? Does anybody not know fills, strokes, layers? Raise your hand high. Be proud. No? Okay, cool. So it'll be quick. The thing when you export from Rhino to Illustrator, you want to make sure that the drawing that you're exporting is set to the origin. So the first thing I'm going to do before I export this, if it does, by the way, it doesn't matter if you're just going to do a snapshot. So for this perspective, for example, I can just select it, and you guys can look up top. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to do make 2D, or sorry, file, export selected. Call it whatever you want. I'm going to make it an Illustrator file. The first thing it's going to ask me when I export to an Illustrator file is if I want to do a snapshot of the scale or if I want to preserve the model scale. If I do a snapshot, it doesn't matter if you bring it to the origin or not. The origin is going to be set on the current view. So if you're zoomed in, it'll bring it in nice and big on the sheet. If you're zoomed out, it'll be nice and small, but it'll still be on the sheet. If you're doing it to the scale, this is important that it goes to the origin. So I'm going to show you guys that. I'm going to select the entire drawing, including the 11/17. So make sure when you export this, you also export what you have as the sheet because I want to just show you guys that it's going to be exactly the same size. If it doesn't, then you didn't do it at correct scale. So select it, move. I'm going to select the center as the origin, and then 0, 0, and that's going to send it to the origin. So it's gone. I was clearly not drawing in the origin. From here, you can export without looking at it, but if you'd like to see what you're exporting, just go back to your zoom selected, file, export selected, and let's do site 164, so that you know. Okay, was everybody able to do that? Anybody not? We're all good? Yeah, what's up? Do it again? Okay. I actually didn't finish exporting it, but sure. I'm gonna repeat that. So I selected the entire thing. I did move, enter. I select the center, somewhere close enough to the center of this drawing. And when I click, I'm gonna do 0, 0. That's where you're gonna send it to the origin. I hit enter. There it is. I'm gonna now do file, export selected. Put a name that's gonna give you enough information so you know what it is. So I'm doing NOLA site 1.64. I'm saving it as an Illustrator file. So click here, go to AI, and I hit save. The next thing it's going to ask you is, do you want to do it to scale, or do you want to just do a screenshot? We're going to do it to scale. So when you do a scale drawing, you click that. Usually, this is a new computer for me, so usually I have. Daniel, do you remember if the scale, the fraction is on the left or on the right? On the left. That's what I think too. Okay, cool. So we're going to put in the fraction of 1/64th into this. Can somebody give me the fraction for 1 divided by 64? Huh? What is it? Point? 0.15625. Okay, so that's 1 divided by 64. On this side, you don't want to do it to 1 inch. You're doing it to a foot, so it's 12 inches. The RGB and CMYK doesn't matter. You'll be changing that in Illustrator. And that's all you need. I'm going to repeat the number. Ready? 0.015625. I'll do it again slower. 0.015625. What? Did I get it wrong? Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to hit OK. So that was sent off. Everybody feel pretty confident that they did it? Yes? Okay. Well, we're going to find out. Illustrator doesn't lie. All right. I put it on my desktop so you guys can look for it on wherever it is that you saved it. Some of you probably don't know where you saved it. It's probably where your Rhino file is. So if you downloaded it, it's going to be in your download folder. Did you die? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open this. I double click. So it says that there's text in there, and that's because I use the text command to put 11 by 17. Rhino has its own fonts, and now Adobe's like, I don't know what font that is. Do you want me to update it? Do you want to just continue? I don't care, so I'm just gonna hit OK. I've never gotten this before. Okay. You guys got that too? Oh, maybe I brought in a dot. Is that what happened? What? This has never happened to me before. Has this happened to you? Hey, I'm good. It's all being recorded. I suck, guys. I suck. Okay, I'm just gonna get rid of 11 by 17 just to check. So I'll do this again. File, export selected. I'm gonna just save over it. It's already set to the scale, 12 inches. You know what it might be? I flipped the numbers. We're gonna find out. We're gonna figure this out. Okay, I messed up. So it's not the left. Daniel, we were both wrong. I think. Okay, try again. Okay, yeah. So I flipped them. Sorry, guys. But this is, see, I'm making mistakes on purpose. This is all planned because you guys are gonna run into this, and now you have a solution. Okay, yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so what I'm looking at is a sheet that's 11 by 17, but in Illustrator it's set to 8.5 by 11. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is how to change that. Since we're all working on Illustrator on our own computers, I want to make sure that we're all consistent here. I prefer to say or have this on Essentials Classic. Usually shows more information. So is anybody not on Illustrator right now? Okay, doesn't matter. Why not? You don't have Illustrator? Okay. Anybody have Illustrator that doesn't have it open? That's not working. You crashed? Okay, no, I'm not worried. Okay, so it sounds like your origin is off. I would just go back to the video, and then if you have problems again next week, we'll cover it. Okay. So you can follow along up here. Let's. Those of you who are having trouble right now with scale, I want you guys to get to Illustrator anyways. So this is what I'm going to do. Those of you that got it to scale and got it to work, can I see hands? Really? Can I like see hands? Those of you with computers down can't put your hands up. So is everybody else having trouble? So why don't I see hands? Who got it to work on Illustrator to scale? So I don't get it. Like, am I confused? What's going on? Somebody talk to me.
I got it on Illustrator, but now I just need to know how to change my artboard from points to inches.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that. Okay, so those of you that don't have your hands on or up, can I move on? Okay, I'm moving on. So we're gonna change the units in Illustrator. I have what, 10 minutes? Okay. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the sheet. by clicking the artboard tool on the left. Make sure that you're on Essentials Classics. Those of you that have your computers down, you can imagine it. So I clicked on my artboard tool. On the right-hand side, I have everything is set to points. I'll go to artboard options. There's a way. There is a way. Yeah, I think. Okay, when I just hit escape twice, and I don't have anything selected. On the right, it's saying document units. I knew there was a way. So inches. So I go back to my artboard. So now it's showing me 8.5 by 11. So I'm going to change the width to 17, the height to 11. There we go. So my box should be exactly 11 by 17, which that's what it is. So now I know for sure my drawing is to scale. That's a quick, nice way to know this drawing is actually to scale the way I intended it to be. Okay, so everybody's familiar with layers and how to pull those up. Okay, some of you are bored. Sorry. So I won't have to go over this too much. You guys can then, in here, you guys can set your line weights. So if I click that line, I'm going to get a little indicator where it tells me what layer that's on. If there were a lot of those lines on that layer and I wanted to change all the lines on the layer, I can click on the circle and it selects everything in that layer. I can change the stroke just to exaggerate it. I'm going to make it 4. And then I want to change the buildings. I clicked on one line. It tells me what layer that's on. I can click it. And I'm just going to change the color. So I'll make it red so we can see it. Actually, I just made a mistake. So I changed the fill by accident. So what I want to do, since the fill is above the stroke, I'm going to change that to transparent, bring the stroke up, make that red. And so now my buildings show up red. I'll show you another quick tool. And remember when I showed you guys in Rhino that having your object snaps on is really important? Because when you the tool I'm about to show you, if you don't have it connecting, actually touching, it's not going to work. It's called Make Live. So is this good, or do you guys want to review anything else? Okay. So I'm going to color these in, and since they're not joined, they're not one solid object. I'm not going to be able to just fill this in by selecting the fill. So this happens sometimes. So rather than showing you how to do it correctly, I'm going to show you how to fix it in case you did it wrong. So what I would do is I would select everything. You can follow along, by the way, and just watch the video later. So I turn that sheet off in the back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything. Control C, so I copy it. I'm going to make a new layer. Drag that layer to the bottom because I'm going to color this in. I'm current because I have the little triangle. I'm current to that layer. And I'm going to do edit, paste in place. It's going to drop anything that I just copied into a single layer on the same place I copied it from. And it looks like it worked. So, by the way, if you want to copy something, and let's say you want to paste it on another drawing and maintain all the layers, there is an option where you click on paste remembers. So you don't have to one by one individually move things. I love it when I see mouths open. Okay, saves a lot of time. If I have this on and I do what I just did, I select everything and I copy it and I think it's going to drop here, it won't. It'll paste it back on the original layer because I have paste remembers on. So if you're running into that, that's why I'm showing you, just turn it off. So if I make a new, like I have this drawing here, which I was going to go over, but we're not. I can copy all of this, Control C, go back here, Control V, and everything is on a single layer. But if I want, I'll just do Control C, paste remembers, Control V. Now it added the layers that came from that other file. So everything is separated. You wasted time. Not anymore. Okay. The pain. Okay. So back to the make live. We have everything on a single layer. And what I'll do is I'll hide everything except that one. Another way to hide everything is you can do Option and you click on the eye. So this just shows everything back, and this turns everything except that one back on. Okay. I'm going to select everything, change, and just follow along with me up here. I'm going to change the stroke to be transparent. So now I can't see anything. That's what I want. It's still there, but I can't see it because the stroke is transparent. I'll do Object, Live Paint, Make. Now I can paint on this. If I turn the layers, all the layers back on, Alt, and hit the eye, those are back in. I go to my Live Paint bucket. And I can start now adding shade to the buildings. Cool? Is that helpful? Okay. It's easier if you set up your drawings in Rhino to have just closed curves for all your buildings. You bring it in, just fill it in, and that's the right way of doing it. But sometimes you have to add color, or you forgot something, you need to change something, whatever. I just showed you a new way to do that. Okay. And this is to scale, so you can go in. This is where you guys just go in and just add whatever information you need. 1/64. Blah, blah, blah. Cool. Any questions? Huh? Yeah. How can I do that? If you okay, I mean, real simple. If you go to my website and then you go to, I have a new link called tutorials. I'll post. I already posted last week's. I'll post this one today, and if you want on there on that link you can see both. But if you don't ever want to go to my website again, you can just go to the YouTube, and it'll show you all the videos. Like a Word doc or something? Okay, I can do that. So I'll do that too. I'll drop a Word file with the links on there so you guys can access it. The YouTube links. So once they're up, I'll go ahead and upload them to the drive.